you're in B2B, if you're looking to improve your marketing efforts for 2025, you are definitely going to want to stick around for this one, because this company we're going to be looking at is really doing some quite interesting things. And there's a lot that I think most B2B marketers need to learn from, because this is a space, and I've seen this time and time again throughout this year, with cost per leads increasing, cost per acquisition increasing. So if that sounds like you, and this is a challenge that you are facing in your business right now, you'll definitely want to stick around for this one, because there's going to be some really, really interesting things in here. We're also going to be back with website roasts again from January onwards. So even myself or one of the team will be doing the website roast live. So if you do want your website roasted live, drop it in the comments below, and we'll put it in the queue for that. Will be starting from January. So we'll put that in the queue, and we'll try and get your website covered from January onwards. If you do want your website audited, but you don't want it to be covered live, you can still book onto a website roast at roastmywebsite.co. Fill in your details on there to apply. And if your business qualifies, then one of our team will be in touch to arrange an audit for you. So this is a company in the kind of HR software space, although they have made a real attempt to almost create their own category with this. So it's a company called Employment Hero, which I believe is actually a New Zealand-based company, although they have expanded globally recently. They're currently valued at, I think, just under $2 billion. They raised a Series F funding round, I think, last year for about $200 million. They're valued at just under $2 billion. They've gone through huge growth over the past 10 years. And there's some things that they're really doing quite differently to what a lot of other B2B companies are doing. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into. So I'm just going to start off from the kind of, and bear in mind, I don't know exactly the context behind all these ads or how these are running, but I'm going to dive into my interpretation of what would be their kind of top of funnel to more middle of funnel and then bottom of funnel content, and just some of the key kind of observations and takeaways from here. So the first thing you'll see, and this is pretty typical that you will see in this kind of space, is that they're leading in at the kind of top of funnel with this kind of lead, this informational lead magnets targeted to presumably what is going to be their ICP, right? So this is effectively HR software, HR enablement software. They've kind of created their own category around this of like an employment OS. Right, so it's this mission behind the brand of making employment easier for everybody in the company, right? Employees and employers. So they're really kind of targeting you'll see a lot of their ads are on things like employee onboarding checklist, ultimate end of year HR planning guide. So these will probably be segmented, and this is a really important thing to factor in, is these will be segmented by different audience personas on LinkedIn. So they may be targeting people in finance roles, they may be targeting line managers, they may be targeting heads of HR and HR directors. So they will tailor probably this content, and if they're not, then they should be, to whoever they are targeting, right? So they would have different types of content running to different segments of their audience to make this as specific as possible. But really the key thing that you'll see here is that they're just thinking about what can we offer that's actually going to be useful to our audience that isn't trying to sell them something at this stage. And this is really, really one of the key points here. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I see most businesses making with their marketing, is they try to go straight in with promoting their product, their service, whatever they're offering, instead of actually delivering genuine value. Something else I thought they were utilizing quite well here is, you'll see this is an ad from, this is actually coming from Kevin's profile. So it looks like Kevin is the MD of Employment Hero in the UK. So this is actually a feature that LinkedIn ads rolled out a little while back called Thought Leader ads, whereby you can actually have ads that, as you'll see, are promoted by the company, but they actually are displayed under the profile of an employee within your organization. So this can be really, really powerful to cut through the noise, because generally people are always going to engage more with a post from a person than a post from a company. It's just human nature, right? When we see a post from a company, kind of feels like it's probably just going to be some spammy marketing, whereas if you see something from a person, you're more likely to take interest from it. So I think that's quite good use of that and getting Kevin's name out there, but also just a way to kind of cut through people who may have otherwise just overlooked the ad from the Employment Hero company page. Now, another thing which I think is key here, and where I think they actually surprised me with this, is my concern at the moment is with things like this, there are pretty much, this is the playbook that every flipping HR software company has been running for years now, right? They're all running the same employee onboarding checklist, ultimate guide to HR planning in 2023, 2024. And you end up in this position, and you see this with most businesses, there's these kind of industry specific lead magnets that everyone offers. All your flipping audience know about it. No one's going to sign up for it because they're just sick of it. Like, your audience is sick of seeing the same thing. Here you go. You just want to get my name and email address, and then you're going to deliver me some crap 10-page PDF with just regurgitated information on it, right? People do not want that. And this is where Employment Hero have actually done something clever. Instead of gating this content on a squeeze page, like most businesses do, where it's putting your name and email address to get the content, they've actually made this content accessible, right? So if you look at this, this is actually a long form blog, a really detailed blog that really goes into all of the things to think about, from the first week to the first month of onboarding a new employee. So this is actually really useful content that people can read. But then what they've done and what they're actually making available here is, if you want to download this handy checklist as a kind of bonus to this, you can. And I think this is a really, really smart strategy, because here's what you have to think about. Conversion rates on lead magnets have been declining and declining over the past few years. And this is why businesses are seeing their cost per lead increasing, because consumers are becoming more savvy to all these marketing tactics. Content is becoming more kind of just AI driven, generic. Everyone's copying each other. There's not really any original content out there. So it's just getting harder to get people to actually opt in for content in the first place. So instead of just settling for let's say you've got a 10% conversion rate on your landing page. Let's say then, so 90% of the people, the traffic that you're driving to your website, aren't receiving any value from you. And if anything, they're leaving with a bit of a sour taste, because they come through to a page trying to get their name and email, and they say, screw you guys, I don't want to opt in. Whereas right now, at least what Employment Hero have done, if I don't want to opt in, I can still get value. So then 100% of the people who have clicked on the ad and expressed some form of interest, but maybe they're not ready to opt in just yet, they can still see this and say, wow, okay, these guys know what they're talking about. So they have been able to progress that relationship. Whereas if you gate your content behind a squeeze page, you are not able to do that. And this is the craziest thing with B2B marketing, and what it's almost like we've kind of created this system at the moment. I see this with marketing teams, where because marketing teams, a lot of the time, their KPIs are based around MQLs and how many marketing qualified leads we can generate. They are kind of forced into, we need to generate MQLs at all costs. So it's actually not in their interest anymore to actually do things like this that are going to increase the chances of somebody actually turning into a sale. And that's why this divide between marketing and sales exists at the moment, right? So I think this is, a lot of the time, this can be a kind of internal, almost like a culture shift within companies, where we really need to start looking at the bigger picture here. Why are we doing this marketing in the first place? It's not just to generate MQLs. At the end of the day, we want to grow the business. We want to generate customers. We want to build goodwill with our target audience and grow the revenue, grow the sign-ups in the business. It's not just to generate MQLs as a vanity metric, which is what they become, and then no one signs up on the back end. Right? Because a lot of the time with these kind of lead magnets, especially earlier on in the funnel, you're just going to get a lot of spam signups anyway. People will give an email address that they never check, and then you'll never hear from them again, or they'll just immediately unsubscribe. It's crazy how many of these MQLs from squeeze pages do not turn into anything. Whereas if you do it the right way, like Employment Hero, where you're actually giving value, the opt-ins they do get are probably going to be much more genuine now. So that's a really important thing that I think a lot of B2B marketers can really learn from here in terms of how they've actually approached this. Another thing that I think is, and this is just kind of comes down to that kind of targeting and segmentation again, but you'll see they've got lots of different angles on this top of funnel content. So this is more of kind of like, reports around burnout and things like that. So it's really thinking about what are those topical things that are going to be really, really relevant to our target audience that aren't trying to promote anything, but is going to be front of mind for them. This is always really key when you're trying to build up that top of funnel content. Now, as we get more kind of what I would consider to be more middle of funnel here, this is where they're doing more kind of seed planting, right? So I think this is a really smart move here. So they've got this, it looks like this is the MD, I think, for the New Zealand side of Employment Hero. So this is a guy called Neil Webster, who I'm guessing I think he's their MD. And this actually just goes out to an article, again, that you'll see this is like a thought leader ad. So again, they're getting their employees out there as well. They're getting their team out there. And this goes through to an article. And this is actually quite a smart move because this is giving them external validation as well, right? They're being seen somewhere that isn't actually their website. So it does carry this additional credibility and weight behind it instead of just sending someone to your own website. And in here, this is almost like a bit of a press release, if anything, where they're actually talking about the software itself and how I believe this is actually how. Let's have a look. How, unsurprisingly, I think this was about how Neil, how he actually found, My Job found me. So this is basically talking about how the tech that they're using behind this can help them to actually find and bring in new employees, right? So it's really kind of planting that seed at this stage. The next thing they're doing here as well, and you'll see this is a nice touch as well, where I think they're using kind of this more like branded imagery, but also real shots of real people. I think this is a really important touch. Again, this is very often overlooked in B2B marketing where people are focused on these like graphics. You just see graphics packs fresh out of Canva that are being used in LinkedIn ads. It just blends into the noise. This, again, you'll see this is a thought leader style ad, so it's actually come from Neil Webster directly. It's a nice photo. It's got faces behind it. You're going to get way more engagement on this. And at this stage, consumption is key. We need people to be consuming this content because otherwise, how are we going to build trust with our target audience if we can't actually get them to consume the content in the first place? So this is something they've done a really good job at here of diversifying not only who that content shows from, as in a company page or a personal profile through a thought leader ad, but also the type of content that they're actually using here as well. This is another example of just diversifying the type of content. And also, again, this is now more middle of funnel where they're kind of just educating here. So they've got this like New Zealand, so presumably this is running to their New Zealand audience, New Zealand employment law updates 2024, and this is just a carousel ad, right? And the great thing actually from a strategic standpoint, how carousel ads can be used, this can actually be quite useful from a retargeting perspective, because you are then able to create custom audiences in LinkedIn of people who have made a certain amount of engagements with this post. This is why I love video views content as well, and then building retargeting audiences from that. Because, for example, you can say to LinkedIn, okay, we want to retarget people who have watched 50% or more of this 3-minute video. So if someone's watched 1.5 minutes of a video in their LinkedIn feed, you know that is a very, very engaged segment of your audience, and they're going to be ripe for retargeting. Same things with things like this as well, where you can measure those engagements and those interactions. This can be really, really useful there. A quick note on that as well. LinkedIn has also rolled out a very, very useful metric recently in LinkedIn ads called dwell time, which actually allows you to see, even if somebody hasn't interacted with an ad, you can see how long they are dwelling or hovering over that post for. So this is really useful just for getting a gauge of like, you know, are we getting in front of the right audience? Are our ads leading to increased consumption? Are we stopping people? Are we grabbing their attention? So dwell time is a really, really interesting metric to look at if you want to know if your creative strategy, if your ad strategy, if your targeting strategy is getting in front of the right people and it's actually grabbing their attention. So another thing here you'll see with diversity in the content, they're also using videos here as well. And in terms of what they're doing here, now that we're getting more middle of funnel, so we've kind of grabbed the attention with this kind of non-salesy content with things that we know our audience would care about. Now we're starting to introduce them to the product. So if I play this, hopefully I think sound is enabled on here.
Sally and Carrie met at 8:30 a.m. They both ordered oat flat whites. They found they were the perfect match, and Carrie had just the role for Sally. Onboarding was over in a few simple steps, and getting paid daily was pretty beeping awesome. As for Carrie, business was blooming thanks to Employment Hero. With all things employment in one place, she could pay, reward, and grow her team with her eyes closed.
So you'll see it's quite clever what they've done. I mean, it's a little bit kind of quirky, tongue-in-cheek, but it is a very smart ad. It's a very well done ad because they've kind of spoken into both of those elements, right, of how the employee benefits and how Carrie, the employer and the hiring manager, also benefits here as well, showing how relaxed she is afterwards, like meditating, because everything's taken care of, right? And it's almost like, and this kind of, I guess, ties into the brand name as well, of like Employment Hero. Like they are making the employees and the employer out to be the kind of hero of this story, right? Like here's Carrie, everything's taken care of for her. She can now focus on the things that matter because Employment Hero has taken care of it. So it's almost like they're through story-driven content, they are explaining what Employment Hero actually does and the value it delivers. And this is another really key point as well. Like you'll see with this ad, what it does really well is it tells and shows stories. It's not just showing, here's all the features and benefits of Employment Hero. It's showing in story format that people can relate to exactly how it benefits the employee and the employer. So this is very, very smartly done. This is a great, in my opinion, this is a great ad. They got a whole bunch of different ones here in all different situations. This is another example of where we've now got, you know, these kind of planting these seeds and starting to show people now actually what Employment Hero can do. So employment is more than just payroll. You'll see here safety and compliance, technology skills, personal development. You've got this, so they've got kind of like snippets of the features of the software that they use behind this as well. If we have a look at another ad here, this is another, like a different one, different video. So it's another story here as well. And just showing some of those features, how that works, and these amazing, easy dashboards that the employers can get on here. So it's really, really smart how they've kind of woven these into the strategy. Another thing you'll see here is this is where they are now starting to drive people through to a dedicated landing page so they can actually learn about the product. Right, so whereas before we're kind of going to this more informational content, we then had that post from David where this is going to like an external website to build that credibility from external sources. But now we're educating people about the product. It's only now we're actually bringing them through to like a landing page. And you'll see here as well, like I mentioned earlier, how they're almost trying to kind of, even though this is effectively HR software, you know, this all-in-one kind of HR software, which have tons out there. It's an incredibly competitive market at the moment. They've really kind of created a new category here by calling this an employment OS, right? The world's first employment OS. And this is actually, like, I won't dive too much into the landing page here because we won't really have time to turn this into a whole kind of landing page audit. But something they've done very, very well here, and I think this is particularly important for software companies, SaaS companies, they have this great, like immediately visible above the fold, just this amazing animated, just like an animated video, basically. I don't even have to click play on it, and it just shows from a top level like how streamlined this system is, like the top level of things you can do. It's kind of like, oh wow, I can look at our payroll in one click, and then I can look at our calendars and our onboarding, outstanding onboarding tasks and all that. Like it just gives people an instant sense of I get it. Like employment OS, I can kind of see how it works straight away without people having to overthink this. So this is very, very well done. And then just below the fold, like I always mention in the website roast, they've got this social proof on here, right? So I don't have to go far. 197 service ratings, 4.5. They've got G2, they've got Trustpilot. So then they've got the kind of feature snippets here again as well. So it's really just conveying all of that key information so quickly and so early on. As we now then start coming more toward the bottom of funnel, this is where by this stage, so if you think about how this is structured, we've got our audience in with content that we know is important to them. We're not even trying to sell them anything. We've slowly built credibility. We've started introducing people from the team. We've then started to introduce the product and how that can work through story-driven content. We brought them through to the website. But a lot of people still aren't going to sign up by this point, especially if you're selling something particularly high value, you've got fairly long or complex buying cycles. HR software, especially for larger organizations, this is a big decision to implement, right? Because it's going to literally impact everybody in their business. If we're talking about payroll and stuff like that, it's a big decision. So they know people aren't going to be buying from that first interaction. So now what they can do is retarget people who have engaged with those middle of funnel ads or been to the website or both, and retarget them with this just trust building now, just to get them over the line, right? The social proof, the credibility, the case studies, the testimonials. And you'll see here from different, they've got some different examples of these testimonials. So head of employee experience and safety at an organization here. We've got another one from a general manager. And this is actually a really, if you're in a position to do this, trying to diversify your testimonials, because you're going to be, again, reaching different segments of your audience. So you want to make sure as many of those segments as possible are represented within your testimonials. So people see them and they think, okay, that's me. I can relate to that. I can relate to this testimonial. You'll see something else they've done here, which is quite smart as well. I call these power quotes. Right, so they've got the longer form testimonial here, but a lot of people will just skim content. So what they've done is they've taken a really powerful quote and just made that bold. So if only one thing grabs people's attention as they're scrolling through their feed and seeing all these different ads, they can just take that top level snippet. I love being able to focus on what I need to do instead of waiting to find things that are out of place. And this is really the key with these power quotes. You want to try and find the things that are as emotive as possible and speak into that desired end outcome that the buyer would have here. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense there. Another thing I think is really cool as well that they're doing here is they're kind of tapping into meme culture with this whole King Charles portrait unveiling thing here. I actually don't know what. Okay, cool. So this is that technology that I think from that article that David was posting about earlier, Smart Match. This is some technology that they're probably using from the maybe candidate hiring side of the platform. But I like how this is just diversification of content. So they're having fun with this. It's not all kind of very corporate. I love it when companies use memes and GIFs and things like that, especially on LinkedIn. A lot of businesses are still shying away from that, but we've actually seen some really, really good results from ad campaigns using things like memes on LinkedIn because it cuts through the noise. It stands out. You always have to think. There are so many, if you just look at some of your competitors, go onto the LinkedIn ad libraries and look at the ads they are running. If your ads feel like their ads or just any other ads out there, it's going to be very difficult for you to get results. So you always want to be thinking and asking yourself, how can we just do things different? How can we have fun with this? How can we show that there are humans that work behind the business? And hopefully you've seen some really good examples here from Employment Hero from some of the bits we've covered so far, right? So finally, I'll just finish on the kind of overall organic strategy. We probably won't have time to dive too much into this, but Couple of things on here that you will notice. If we have a look at their position 1 rankings, and this is actually, let's take a look at Australia, because it looks like where most of their rankings are. So if we have a look at Australia and we filter this by top ranking, so you'll see here they've got some huge, I mean, they're ranking in position 1 flipping out for like employment, which is huge. Contractor agreement template. So they've got a whole bunch of, what you'll notice here, they've got a ton of blogs that are ranking. And this, it baffles me how so many businesses still aren't taking their blog strategy seriously. This is such a phenomenal way of building a solid pipeline of customers, but most importantly, building trust. Where most businesses go wrong with their blog strategy is they will create a content calendar, use SEO research tools, stick it into ChatGPT, get a content writer to polish it up, and then publish it. You have to be getting thought leaders within your organization to create genuinely original content and useful content. People don't like, I see this so many times where you can tell content has just been created for Google. It hasn't been created for the user. And one of the biggest shifts that Google has made with their latest algorithm updates is to tackle exactly that. If there's going to be one thing you will see over the coming year, and you're seeing this with these kind of parasite SEO companies like Forbes magazine and things like that, where they have lost, I think Forbes lost millions of keywords in November, millions of keyword rankings from this latest algorithm update, because Google are really taking this seriously. They are looking for things like stories, personal anecdotes, things that AI can't replicate, right? Because AI doesn't have personal stories or experience. So it's looking for these original first person perspectives. So this is really, really important. But if you do this right, your blog content can become easily one of your biggest acquisition channels for the business. So if we have a look at some examples on here from Employment Hero, this is one of their blogs. So they've got like employee happiness survey, 20 questions you need to ask. One thing I did notice on here, if there's anyone from Employment Hero watching this is a blog that ranks organically, but this report you've got on here is from 2022. I mean, ideally, even if this was created in 2022 and you haven't got a new one, just take that off, because you're just going to reduce the amount of downloads you get on it just from that alone, right? So just take that off the title. If you can get an up-to-date one for 2025, amazing. If not, just literally take that off the title, make sure it's updated, because you've got organic traffic coming through to these through to this page. But again, this is an example here of how they've really got, very, very valuable content. The thing that I would say with this, and actually something I wanted to mention about this piece in particular as well, my concern with this and a suggestion here and where I think they could actually do things better, just on a finishing note, is if somebody comes through to this page, this still, with, like I mentioned, with people feeling burned with all of these lead magnets, opt-ins, if I come on here, there is a very, very good chance I would see that. I would see the download button. I'd be like, oh, here we go. It's another lead magnet, and I'd bounce. I would be really interested to test having this, especially on mobile, and on desktop as well, though, go straight into the content. Still keep the sidebar, and maybe even having some like embedded for like the mobile view, actually having some, like an embedded CTA within the content itself. That people can kind of scroll past, but going straight into that content, because what you'll find is that I think you'll have a significantly lower bounce rate as a result. You want to make sure you're using something like some sort of visitor behavior analytics. So whether that's something like Hotjar, Microsoft Clarity, where you can actually look at the scroll maps on the website and see, and I would literally be testing this. I would see what happens if we just take this top section off. Are we getting more consumption? Because again, the key here, can we increase consumption on this content? That's really going to be the most important thing. And I think that would be well worth testing, because otherwise you're going to get a lot of people who see this and they just think, oh, here we go, they're just trying to get me to opt in. They don't actually realize that there is a long form piece of content here that they can actually consume, because that was my initial impression when I first saw this page. So that's definitely something that I think Employment Hero could try here for anyone else who's thinking about using a strategy like this through 2025, something that I would recommend. And sometimes even just having just ungated content in general, it's not a bad thing. And I really want to encourage as many businesses as possible to start utilizing it, because it can be a very, very powerful strategy to begin building trust with your audience. So there you have it, guys. We're going to wrap that one up there. I really, really hope you found that valuable. If you do have any questions or anything you want to add, be sure to drop them in the comments below. And if you'd like your website covered in the upcoming website roast in January, drop it in the comments, or feel free to drop us a DM directly. And we will see you guys very, very soon.